You will call me Commander.
I think that there's no dispute that the G.I. Joe franchise is one of the more lauded franchises in the world. It was a core part of my childhood growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, and I'm sure it was the case for many of you as well. A franchise is only as strong as its characters, and in a roster as packed as G.I. Joe's, it's tough for any one character to truly overshadow the rest. Which is why I feel fan opinion is so divided when it comes to who the most popular Joe is. However, I think it's fair to say that such a division doesn't really exist when the question turns to who the most iconic villain in the G.I. Joe universe is. Sure, there are the likes of Serpentor and Destro, but let's be honest, when you think of a G.I. Joe villain, you immediately think of Cobra Commander. Over the years, as the franchise has grown, we've seen numerous versions of the character emerge, making him one of the most complex characters to explore. So in this video, that's precisely what I'm gonna do. If you want to find out everything there is to know about Cobra Commander, from his numerous origins, his personality, and what makes him such a deadly foe for the G.I. Joes, this is a one-stop video for you. This video will obviously have some minor lore spoilers in it, consider yourself warned. Join me now as I explore the anatomy of the enigma, the psycho, the deadly Cobra Commander. Let's begin. The man behind the mask, architect of a terrorist organization and the twisted visage within. Cobra Commander is an individual who inspires terror in the hearts of both his foes and subordinates, leading the Cobras with an iron fist. However, despite being the overarching antagonist of the G.I. Joe series, nobody really knew who he was until he put that mask on. Over the years, I think it's fair to say that this mystery has only further deepened as different sources have put out their own stories regarding his true identity. Okay, let's peel these layers of deceit one by one. During the original Marvel comic run of G.I. Joe written by Larry Hama, we're introduced to an unnamed and seemingly ordinary American military veteran who works as a door-to-door used car salesman. After returning from active duty, this individual begins suffering from extreme paranoia and resentment towards the government, which is only made worse by the death of his brother. Having grown disillusioned with society and the government, I think it was absolutely terrifying to see him transition into a certified sociopath who uses his charisma and talent to form a pyramid scheme-style cult, traveling all around America, recruiting other disillusioned folks like him and then corrupting them. Eventually, he settles at a small town called Springfield that had fallen on hard times and uses his criminal mastermind to resurrect the place, converting it to the Cobra stronghold. This cult would soon grow into the global terrorist organization that you and I are familiar with, known as Cobra. I think what makes this whole thing terrifying is that even in real life, groups like these are born from the corruption of vulnerable individuals. They fall under the sway of these terrorist groups and organizers for various reasons, and become radicalized against society itself. The rise of Cobra Commander and the Cobra here, I feel perfectly encapsulates this process. I also have to mention that even in this comic, we don't really get to see his face, which I believe is quite intentional, as it makes his rise to evil even more significant, because it gives the sense that Cobra Commander is not a villain built in a lab or a freak of nature. He rose from within society itself. Due to this, I think we could say that Cobra Commander is a twisted reflection of society that hides behind a mask. Following this, let's take a look at the 1987 film G.I. Joe the Movie, which presents one of the wildest takes on this character's origins in my opinion. So in this film, Cobra Commander is not even human to begin with. Let me explain. In the 1987 film, Cobra Commander is portrayed as a nobleman from a species of reptilian humanoids called the Cobra La. According to the film, the Cobra La were once the dominant species on Earth, but following the Ice Age and the rise of humans, they were forced to live in subterranean places where they continued their civilization. Cobra Commander was a scientist and a nobleman who had been sent by his leader Globulus to infiltrate human society and lead them to destruction. In the film, he's put on trial for his failures to accomplish his goal, and it's here that we actually get to see what lies behind his mask for the first time. And let me tell you, it isn't a pretty sight. His visage is completely disfigured and mutilated with multiple inhuman eyes caused by an accident during one of his experiments. Let's talk about how the 2009 live-action film G.I. Joe Rise of the Cobra takes a more direct approach to this character by, once again, making him a soldier, who turns out to be named Rexford G. Rex Lewis, and is presumed to be killed in action. However, despite being severely injured, he not only recovers thanks to nanite technology developed by Dr. Mindbender, but he perfects it and emerges as the leader of the Cobra terrorist group, aka Cobra Commander. Regardless of the numerous origin stories, the Cobra Commander remains the most dangerous, megalomaniacal foe of the G.I. Joes. What's going on inside his head? While the origins of the man behind the mask might have varied over the years, I can at least tell you that no matter what version of Cobra Commander you can think of, his personalities remain the same. I mean, the guy's a real piece of work, to the point that he makes some of the real-life dictators and tyrants look almost cute. In the first version of his character that I spoke about earlier, his rage toward the system is understandable until his de-evolution starts turning him from a character that can evoke sympathy into just an absolute sociopath. While there's no doubt that Cobra Commander is extremely charismatic, the guy literally converted a pyramid scheme into a terrorist organization, you know. It's all self-serving in the end. Loyalty is not expected by him, it's demanded. And if someone fails to deliver that, it's usually their last mistake. Because for Cobra Commander, obedience is not just a requirement for him to lead, but also a necessity to satisfy his own massive ego and insecurity. Believe me when I tell you, this guy is highly egotistical and insecure, because his sole reason to conquer the world is so that there's nobody else above him or a threat to his perceived supremacy. Yeah, he tags on things like having a destiny to usher humanity to its doom, or being disillusioned by the world order. Once again, depending on which version of the character we're looking at. But honestly, I feel like these are nothing but half-truths to mask his real goal, which is to become all-powerful and almighty. This is why, unlike the Joes, who not only work as a team but also have a brotherhood among each other, the Cobras are missing this quality because it originates from their leader, who believes no one is indispensable except for himself. In his head, Cobra Commander views every single one in his terrorist organization, no matter how skilled they may be, as mere pawns, and he doesn't hesitate to sacrifice any piece if it grants him even a semblance of power or a feeling of having satisfied his fragile ego. This style of narcissistic and egomaniacal leadership costs him dearly when Dr. Mindbender manages to create Serpentor, who first makes his appearance in G.I. Joe issue number 49. While hellbent on the destruction of the Joes and conquering the world, Serpentor earns the genuine admiration of his troops, effectively causing an internal shift within the Cobra organization. He even manages to beat Cobra Commander and takes charge of the terrorist organization for a period of time. What I'm trying to highlight here is that despite having led the group for so long, nobody really missed his presence when he was gone, because of the narcissist he was and the way he treated people. In fact, I think this is further highlighted by the rift within the Cobra, the moment another competent leader arrived. However, don't let my berating of the Cobra Commander give you the wrong impression that the guy's an idiot. In fact, quite the contrary, he's an actual genius who's conducted numerous experiments of his own and is also very tactically astute. I mean, you have to be competent enough to be the unchallenged leader of a terrorist organization like Cobra with powerful individuals despite having a personality like his. Why does the mask matter so much? I think most people would agree that one of the most iconic things about Cobra Commander's character is his headgear, whether it be a hood or a chrome faceplate. While there are many reasons why the mask matters so much, I feel the most obvious reason is that it lends to a sense of mystery to his character. Due to his face being covered most of the time, it makes his crimes more inhuman in nature, as the mask grants him a sense of detachment from humanity itself, in my opinion. I hope you get what I'm trying to say here. A face is such an important part of an identity. Whenever someone does something good or evil, if we have a face we can attach it to, it grounds those things in reality. However, in Cobra Commander's case, since it's almost always covered, this is next to impossible for us to do, which I believe further enhances his mystique and dread. There's also the fact that having no face makes him more than just a man. I'd argue that the mask, regardless of its design or material, transforms him from a man to a symbol. He is Cobra incarnate. The mask symbolizes the organization itself, a faceless terror that threatens the entire world. I also think that the mask serves as a symbol of authority, as the one who wears it is considered the leader of the Cobra. This is not just my conjecture, because in the Marvel Comics continuity, after Serpentor ousts the original Cobra Commander, he also has to accept a fake as the new Cobra Commander because he never truly knew the man behind the mask. The hood in particular perfectly embodies, in my opinion, his status as a cult leader of sorts during the initial evolution of the Cobra from a cult to a terrorist organization. He continues this tradition by mainly wearing the hood during ceremonial occasions or when not under direct threat. The faceplate is generally used when he has to directly engage in combat or when he needs to broadcast a call to arms to his troops. The chrome faceplate was made more famous by the Sunbow cartoon, which fans argue saying that it grants the Cobra Commander a much more militaristic and intimidating look. However, in other continuities like the G.I. Joe movie from 1987, the faceplate serves to hide his disfigurement, while in others, it also acts as a life support system that helps to sustain him from injuries like in the live-action film G.I. Joe Rise of the Cobra in 2009. Besides the lore significance of the masks, I think it's also important to note that it's important for toy collectors as well, who are also divided in their opinion regarding the figurine based on its mask. In the end, for Cobra Commander, the mask is his true identity and not the face that lies underneath it. How many Cobra Commanders are there really? I think there's no real simple answer to the question of how many Cobra Commanders there actually are in total, because of the sheer number of continuities that have emerged over the years. However, I shall attempt to briefly introduce you to all of them in a manner which is hopefully not so confusing. So we have the original Cobra Commander from the Marvel Comics continuity, who used to be a veteran soldier turned car salesman turned terrorist leader, who I already talked about. I've also mentioned the fake Cobra Commander, who turned out to be a Crimson Guard from the Fred series that appeared after the disappearance of the original Cobra Commander. Then we have the Sunbow cartoons that aired from 1983 to 1987, which made the chrome faceplate famous among fans. Following this, there's another Cobra Commander who is a noble man from a reptilian race called the Cobra Law. Then, in the Action Force comics, which was the UK version of the G.I. Joe series, Cobra Commander is actually an individual named Baron Ironblood, who leads his own terrorist organization called the Red Shadows. I believe he eventually masterminds the downfall of his own group by betraying them and rises up as Cobra Commander, the leader of the new terrorist group called the Cobra. Things only get more wild from here on out as the IDW Comics continuity established that the Cobra Commander is a title and not a single person who gets elected by the Cobra Council. I personally think this concept is pretty cool as it plays on the whole mask being the symbol that I explored earlier. The IDW comics simply state that there have been numerous Cobra Commanders over the years, without giving us a specific number. Then the Sigma 6 toy line reimagines Cobra Commander as a warrior king in full battle armor with snake motifs. Then, in G.I. Joe Resolute the miniseries, which is totally another continuity, we get a much darker and cowardly version of Cobra Commander. But there's nothing that really makes him stand out from the rest. Then, in 2010, G.I. Joe Renegade would then present Cobra Commander as the traditional leader of a terrorist organization who moonlights as a wealthy corporate tycoon called Adam DeCobre, the CEO of Cobra Industry. However, one of my favorite personal depictions of the villain comes not in any G.I. Joe continuity, but in the Transformers series. He appears in the third season of the original Transformers animated series in the episode titled Only Human, as a weapons dealer codenamed Old Snake. Even though I believe the show never explicitly tells us that the character is Cobra Commander, there are many things that make this fact irrefutable. Starting with the faceplate and the visible traces of the blue uniform underneath the trench coat, he's also identified as the former leader of a terrorist organization and has the same voice actor in Chris Latta. Finally, we also have Rex Lewis in the live-action films, who becomes Cobra Commander. Not counting the IDW version of the character, there have been at least 5 different Cobra Commanders over the years. They say evil has many faces, and I guess Cobra Commander puts truth to this statement. To conclude, whether it's as a member of a reptilian species or just a disillusioned car salesman, Cobra Commander continues to be one of the most iconic villains to have ever come out of the 80s. There's no denying the man's genius and charisma, and in my opinion, he's a perfect poster child of what happens when these things are used for evil instead of good. I've always thought that what makes Cobra Commander so special is the fact that he is a massive what-if character. What I mean by that is that he actually makes me wonder what if he had actually decided to use his gifts for good instead of turning evil. Over the years, as we observed, Cobra Commander has evolved from a disillusioned soldier to a symbol of terror who has been a constant thorn for the Joes. While others from within his organization have risen to challenge his reign, time and time again, none have managed to capture the imagination of fans quite like Cobra Commander. What's your favorite version of this character? Let me know in the comments below. For now though, it's time for me to say goodbye. I hope to see you soon in the next one. Until then, stay safe